How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tech Talk. Guys, I have a quick little dialogue I want to do with you guys. It's about professional predictability. And what do I mean by that? I mean that professional predictability is the expectation of us to carry out what is needed within our prescribed role. Basically, policy has an end result, and then we have that expectation to meet that end result. With that said, I'm going to read an article to you guys that's going to be printed in the AJA magazine very soon, hopefully in March. And the title of this article is, Does Professional Predictability Make Us Vulnerable? Because again, what's expected can easily be manipulated, especially by the inmate population. And they have been known to manipulate the procedures of policy. I know in the past I've said, beware of inmates could manipulate policy, but I think as I've matured a little, I believe we're more concerned about the manipulation of the procedure of the policy. I'm trying to separate the two, policy being the end result, procedure being what gets us there. So again, I write these books, Inmate Manipulation Decoded, and this book kind of teaches us how to navigate through inmate interactions. And I think this is a good book, and link to that is in the description. But even if I protect staff, give them all the knowledge they need to deal with inmate interactions, you still got these policies that, they're created on good intent. We need them. But the procedures doesn't allow us to maneuver to situations that could shift, especially in that moment. Corrections is complex. It's fluid, so you got to be able to give staff a chance to maneuver when need be. My boy Wayne Sanderson would say when you develop policy, you got to allow for people to be situationally innovative. You got to be careful that you don't create procedures in which staff can't maneuver when the situation changes. So I want to read this article to you real quick, break it down a little bit. It'll be quick, just to get the thought out there, because I think it's needed. It's definitely trended because the misuse of PREA nationally. Basically, PREA has been weaponized. Definitely something that been created on good intent. But even though it was created based on liability, we got to be very wary that the liability doesn't cross too much into how it has to be done. I get the pressures of the outside and they say, hey, we need you to do this better. And they tell you what the end result is. And then we, as the professionals, should be developing the operational side, the tactical side, the how it should be done. We don't want the people that are pushing the liability side to overwhelm us in how they want the how to be done. We got to provide some level of kickback because, again, the liability comes from really, am I giving you the end result? Yes, I'm giving it to you. But you got to allow us ways to maneuver sometimes because this isn't a perfect world. So again, the title of this article is, Does Professional Predictability Make Us Vulnerable? And I'm hoping everybody listens to this, especially if you're policy creators. But I think frontline should listen to this as well. Management, outside, people from the outside. So in corrections, being professionally predictable can be our greatest ally or our worst enemy. And that, again, the worst enemy, greatest ally when it comes to mitigating liability, worst enemy when it comes to executing the tactical. With that said, you may be asking yourself, what is professional predictability? It's the defining steps, the procedure correctional staff must take within their prescribed role and function that aid in their efforts to meet and execute the requirements of a needed and essential policy. Now, since policies are developed within the context of the agency's past failures and successes, correctional staff, especially jail and prison management, must always keep in mind that there is a level of expectation that must be met to successfully meet the overall end result. So that's the policy part. What do I have to accomplish? Bang. End result. Expectation in a perfect world is a word of value that's centered around trust and the belief of a consistent and needed action. In this case, the needed action would be the requirement, so that's the procedure, that move us towards the end result of a policy that must be implemented. Now, needless to say, corrections is not a perfect world. Situations don't always provide staff with optimal conditions in which procedures can perfectly be applied as suggested or required to meet the end result, the policy. On another note, let's not forget manipulators, so those manipulative inmates who, through an understanding of what is required, what is expected, that's the professional predictability, the procedure side, find ways to misuse the procedure required to benefit their selfish wants for personal gains. This can sometimes create a major conflict between liability and effective tactical execution. So mind you, when I say liability, I mean the end result. This is what we're supposed to accomplish because of, let's say, liability. When I say effective tactical, that's what we got to do out on the floor. That's how we apply it. So sometimes that professional predictability, if you don't separate it from the from the result of policy, and you push that professional predictability too much into the procedure, it can wind up causing staff to basically be manipulated, as inmates can get a better understanding of the procedure through frequent contact with that procedure, and they find ways to circumvent the procedure. So mind you, I asked a question a while ago, you think inmates know more about the job than we do, like the policies and procedures? I do believe they know what's expected of us, but the procedures we have to be very wary about. I don't think they should know those procedures to a T, and that's why we need to be situationally innovative. Because if the how is so strict that we can't maneuver, then yes, through their constant use of it, of course they're going to know the procedure because they're utilizing it for every selfish gain that they need, and we're not able to maneuver because we weren't involved in how the procedure was to be implemented or the policy was to be implemented. So let me go back. This can sometimes create a major conflict between liability and effective tactical execution. Retired Sergeant Russ Hamilton has seen this conflict present itself many times in the course of his 30-year career. Administration, this is his quote, when presented with situations that expose their department to liability, tend to favor the cookie cutter approach. Policies and procedures, along with training and proof of practice, are their go-to repertoire. The problem caused by the practical application be damned. End quote. Consistent expectations within the application or procedural execution, so we're talking about the tactical side of the policy, without any areas of discretion or situational adjustment by experienced staff, can slowly erode the effectiveness of what the policy is meant to achieve. Basically, professional predictability, however beneficial it is in its efforts to alleviate liability, may render correctional staff helpless in dealing with the manipulation of policies solely based on good intent. It truly becomes a game of persistence. So you got the inmate versus exhaustive effort. So that's the overwhelmed staff, in which 9 times out of 10, this is scary, guys, but 9 times out of 10, persistence will triumph. That means the manipulative inmate will triumph. They will literally be persistent in their manipulation of the procedure, and staff just become exhausted and do what's convenient. Just let's run it, be done with it. Let's run it, be done with it. Let's run with it, be done with it. And really, because they're not able to adjust to the situation, because their hands are tied, they wind up not being able to do anything long term that may actually be extremely beneficial. This is probably going to hit home with a lot of people. A quick example of professional predictability being both an ally, so you got alleviating liability, and an enemy, which is the tactical side, is the weaponizing of PREA, Prison Rape Elimination Act. The Prison Rape Elimination Act was unanimously passed by Congress in 2003. Okay, so the act was a culmination of a collaborative effort between human rights, faith-based, and prison rape advocacy. The goal of PREA is to eradicate prisoner rape in all types of correctional facilities in the country. The collaboration noted above was creating good intent, and what was passed has good intent. But with that said, the missing component to the above is the needed filter that all policies of good intent must pass through before being applied into a world that will look to misuse it. In this case, the missing component is the experienced correctional staff who are burdened with the application of a policy that has now been weaponized by many inmates to garner a sense of illicit control in many of the daily and needed operations of our prison and jails. So you got the manipulating of housing, the manipulating of the placement of staff, manipulating permissible items, manipulating gender expression for selfish gains, etc. Again, in a perfect world, liability would have been noted in the need of the policy, but the procedure, the how, should have been developed by those with experience in their efforts to mitigate any misuse. Sadly, those who expressed the need for the policy, which was founded solely on good intent, have also developed the procedures without any influence from those who have the experience to filter and navigate the discretionary actions needed in case of misuse. So remember, you have the policy, what PREA expects, but how it's carried out, that's the procedure, that's operational, that's the how. And that gives us our chance to adapt and adjust. So I get the liability side, but if the liability starts creeping into the procedure, it will start limiting staff's ability to adapt and adjust to what could be a fluid situation or just an inmate manipulating the system. And we're just going through the routine. Joe Paponio, retired lieutenant from Texas Department of Criminal Justice, believes when it comes to application, when it comes to the procedure of how a policy must be executed, experienced staff must be involved in its birth. They are the problem solvers who have to deal with the problems in real time. This is his quote right here. And in corrections, as the problems evolve, placing limits on our staff's efforts to resolve will eventually lead to utter chaos. And that's the end of his quote. In conclusion, developers of policies and procedures should note that professional predictability, in an effort to alleviate liability, should focus its strength on the overall result of the needed policy. This is what I need. That's the end game. Okay, got it. This is what we need. Let the consistent expectation of what is required fall heavily into the outcome of the overall goal of what needs to be ultimately accomplished. When it comes to the procedural, the application, experienced staff should be allowed some level of discretion to meet the overall needs of the constant and ever-changing situations they are presented. Remember, what is expected, what is predictable, can easily be manipulated. The more we limit correctional staff and their ability to utilize discretion within their area of expertise, to meet the needs of policy, the more we focus on the fear of liability in which expectations and predictability fall deep within the procedures of what needs to be accomplished. Inmates will then manipulate the application of the process, and staff will be left running in circles as every action they take is being illicitly controlled. Therefore, staff will spend more time reacting within the limits of illicit control as opposed to truly using their expertise to regain control and commit to efforts that can prevent. Let policy dictate the what, but let experienced staff dictate the how. So that's the procedure. As retired Major Wayne Sanderson once quoted, professional predictability should never conflict with the need to be situationally innovative. Bang. Love that. I just want to put it out there. Quick video. I did this one solo. I think the message needed to get out there. I hope you guys enjoy it. Hopefully you guys give some comments, but I think this should be shared out. I think this is a good effort that's being tossed your way to let people know that, hey, come on, let us do our job. Trust us to do our job. Is that what you want? We can make it happen, but let us manage the how. Because the last thing you want is for staff to be going through something fluid and they can't make the decision to solve the matter, and they wind up being manipulated because the procedure itself doesn't allow for the leeway for staff to maneuver. If you want to put pressure on us from the outside to create a policy based on good intent, okay, we'll work with you. But that pressure to create the procedure should come from those that have the experience. Don't let the fear of the liability creep into the procedure where we don't move. As always, guys, the show Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.